Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Battle for Wesnoth Amateurs Cup. Today we're going to wrap up round 2. Two matches left to go, and this is the first. We are Imir versus Dakede. Now, this was another one of the ones where they only got to play one game. Unfortunately, they ran out of time. But we have Imir, or Ralik as he's going by, as the Northerners over here with the Troll Rock Lobber Commander, and we have Dakede as the Loyalists. So let's see how this plays out. So Imir starts off with double scouts and a Naga fighter, and then he goes down there and recruits another wolf rider. I saw a troll, and I'm not sure what the third one was. It passed by too quickly. The perils of continuous replay. Meanwhile, Dakede up there, I'm just going to set it on full map, I guess. Meanwhile, Dakede up there has got two mermen and a horseman. Two mermen and a horseman. Interesting recruit. Horsemen are obviously very useful for their high charge bonus damage in the daytime, but on this map, merfolk can definitely be useful since they've got decent defense in water. So it looks like he did get an assassin to start off with as well, which I think is an excellent choice. So early villages being claimed. And Dakede is grabbing a couple of spearmen as well. I know I'm not sure why he moved back here. That's an interesting move. We have, it looks like, identified the enemies though, although the Loyalists may not have seen the Wolf Riders yet. No, they've seen each other, right? Well, nope, the Loyalists won't have seen the Northerners yet. But I think they have now, with that Wolf Rider moving forward. So yeah, now both sides have identified each other. Oh, a cheeky little daytime charge, which kind of paid off. But if you'll notice, okay, so one of the things that can sometimes really determine how the early game goes is just the sheer fact here that the Northerners have already taken 9 out of 16 villages. The Loyalists have only taken, I believe, 5. They've been moving around, they've moved their troops to different places. Now, that's enough villages to maintain their troops without paying any upkeep, which is good. But it still means that they have just a few gold less than the Northerners, and depending on the exact ratio, that might be enough extra gold for the Northerners to afford an extra unit, which early game can really tip the balance sometimes. So, just as a point, excuse me, it's valuable to claim your villages, the villages on your side of the map, as rapidly as you possibly can. So here, the Northerners are launching a pretty aggressive nighttime attack, but seems like a decent time for it. And it looks like they reloaded the game at some point there. So I think they are going to manage to kill that Wolf Rider at least. Well, maybe not. If they move the mage up, they will. Yeah, it looks like either they're having to replay the game, to start the game over again over a couple of days, or they're having connection issues, or possibly both. Oh! Imir is going for a very aggressive attack with his Troll Rock Lobber. Interesting. Okay, so right now, if we look at the stats, both sides have lost 1 unit. However, the Northerners have lost a more expensive unit, so in that sense, the Loyalists are ahead. And it is daytime. So, as daytime is coming on, it's dawn. What we've got is a situation where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Northern units, including their leader, pretty close to surrounded. I mean, they've got some units down here, but these units can't get in the way enough to stop these units from reinforcing. They could potentially surround Proyer here by getting the Wolf Rider onto that space and the Troll Whelp onto this space. That would stop him from moving. But they can't stop the Fencer, they can't stop the Spearman, and doing that would put them in a very precarious position, where they could easily be ganged up on themselves. Meanwhile, over here, this Horseman is about to become incredibly dangerous, and there isn't a lot of cover. So I would say right now, positionally speaking, the Loyalists definitely have an edge, particularly as it's coming on dawn. So the Northerners are trying to kind of move out of the encirclement, which is wise. They're shifting south to attack Vaynor here, but Vaynor is, he's got 70% defense on that terrain, so he's holding on. Wow. That is a lucky, lucky Naga, but not lucky enough to avoid being sniped by a horseman. Okay. Unfortunate that guy's going to die, since he just got some experience, but still, at least he took somebody down, right? So yeah, the Northerners are falling back, definitely, which is appropriate. But the Loyalists, I'm not sure if the Loyalists are... Well, they're making a push. Making an aggressive push. They don't want to lose that horseman. And another mage being recruited as well. Interesting. So, I think as the Northerners, in this situation, I think I would have tried to kill the horseman. Because you had an assassin available who could have poisoned him with ranged attacks that he can't retaliate against. I'm not sure if they would have actually been able to kill him, but they might, at the very least, have been able to damage him very badly and make it unacceptably risky for him to launch another lance attack. Right now, it's perfectly acceptable for him to launch another lance charge. Now, in terms of targets, he doesn't have many, but he does have a turn to kind of move into position, and he can certainly claim this village. So, I don't know, I feel like if I was playing the Northerners, I probably would have stayed and fought there, tried to get my Rocklobber up here to recruit reinforcements and flood them into the area, just to make this horseman kind of back up. The other thing that's relevant, of course, is the Northerners still have 50 gold in the bank, and it'll be night in 2 turns. So now is definitely the time to go on the counter-offensive. 4 Troll Whelps is an interesting recruitment. Like, as I've expressed before, Troll Whelps aren't my very favorite unit. They're mainly just good at tanking relatively weak attackers, because they can regenerate, of course, 8 hit points around. But their low defenses most places make them deceptively fragile compared to Orcish grunts. You really want a troll on the mountains. A troll on a mountain can do very, very good work with that high defense. Or on hills. Hills and fungus are also good for them. Other terrain types, not so much. Oh, he's trying to assassinate the assassin. But you can see, like over there, that troll whelp just gets wrecked because its defense in water is 30%. Okay, there you go. Now go for the horseman. Okay, good job. Well done. And more trolls and Naga coming out. So it looks like the Imir is deciding to lean very, very heavily on troll whelps. Like I said, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. Although, and interestingly, the Loyalists are leaning very, very heavily on mages. I think I've seen them recruit 4 or 5, which is a lot of mages. A lot of mages and not many spearmen to guard them. But Imir keeps doing this thing where he keeps pushing out his leader as if he's going to go into combat with him. Which, to be honest, in Wesnoth, often is not a great strategy. Now. Okay, so this is a case of unfortunate timing here. The Northerners didn't manage to get their assault launched in the time they had during the night. So it's about to be daytime, which means that essentially the Loyalists launched their attack during the previous day, made up some ground, killed a unit or 2, if I recall correctly. Yeah, they've outkilled the Northerners at this point. And then they got to fall back and recoup without being punished. Now, it's really tricky to get the timing right, is the thing. So I'm not really criticizing Imir for this, but I'm just noting that this turn is pretty much his last chance to make an aggressive push against the Loyalists, and he's not in a position where it will be wise to do so, so he can't do that. Which is definitely a shame, and it goes a long way towards explaining, like, thinking about this stuff goes a long way towards explaining why matches end up won or lost. Because if you have stuff in place at dusk or at dawn to push an aggressive attack during the appropriate time of day, things get a lot easier for you. But it takes a lot of looking forward at the coming turns, or a lot of luck, one of the two. Myself, I've generally had been on the luck side of the strategy. Myself, I don't do enough planning to be a really fantastic player. Okay, another point of order here. Yes, it's dawn, but I'm not sure that was a fight worth retreating from. On account of, you've got other trolls over here, I think you could easily collapse 5 or 6 units on these 3 and kill 1 or 2 of them this turn before any reinforcements can arrive. And making aggressive use of those opportunities is definitely really, really important. Dakede is just playing a kind of slow, patient game right now. He's not pushing super hard, although he will probably start pushing this turn. But he's been building up. He pushed back and attacked, he counterattacked, then he drew back. He's been kind of solidifying his position, and pretty soon he's going to start striking again in a very controlled way. Yeah, he's moving over here to isolate and destroy those 2 isolated trolls. The other problem with trolls is they're slow. They're only 4 movement points, typically. Or 5, if they're quick. So, these guys over here could definitely isolate and kill those 2 troll whelps. At this point, they have some units coming in on them, so they may want to be careful, but looks like they're just going to push for it. But that's definitely a lot of mages in the Loyalist army. A lot of mages for the Loyalists, a lot of trolls for the Northerners. It's unfortunate that mages are a very solid counter to trolls. And we do have Imir's leader out in the open, unguarded. That is going to be a real problem for him. Okay, apologies for the discontinuity there. I had to take a phone call. Where were we? Yes. Rallic is out in the middle of nowhere fighting a couple of spearmen. That's a bad place for him to be. In this case, he may well be able to escape, but important piece of information here, there is a fencer just to the south, and it is afternoon now, so it's not going to turn night. That troll rocklobber cannot get away from this fencer. The fencer is a skirmisher. Unless they surround this guy with troops, he cannot possibly escape from Inyek's attacks. He has enough HP to weather the attacks of Inyek for at least another turn, but they'll also need to cover him against the other units in the vicinity. So this might be a successful assassination depending on what happens exactly. Well, good shot. Okay, trying to kill the fencer instead of escaping from him, that's actually a pretty good strategy. That spearman, man, he's done some damage. See, this is why I'm not a huge fan of trolls. They just deal... Their damage output is very, very low overall. Oof, yikes. It's just not super impressive. I mean, they get 2 attacks with 7 base damage. They just don't hurt much. Alright, so... The troll rocklobber has escaped. It is nighttime, so it's time for the Northerners to be pushing another aggressive attack. Good. Good hits there, good punches. Oh, and we are getting close to having a troll level. So the mass whelp strategy is kind of paying off. Not sure that's doing as well as it really could, though. Oh, and we've got the northerner, the loyalist leader in the north coming out to play as well. That is dangerous, I would say. Yikes. Because, yeah, see, several units are in position to attack him. And these guys can, yeah, this is dangerous. Oh, triple Wolf Rider recruit. Just try and rush somebody up to the front lines as quickly as possible. Okay, so Dakede here surrenders. He renamed his commander Gandalf, incidentally. So yeah, I think he saw that he'd put himself in a poor position down here, where he was going to end up surrounded by the troll whelps, because he didn't have anybody in a position to block these guys. He could have potentially... yeah, I'm not sure what. Gandalf was just going to get the absolute shit punched out of him in the coming turn, because these guys were going to come wrapping around, probably pause to beat up Idle a little bit, but Gandalf here cannot get out. He cannot get out, they are coming, drums in the deep, etc. And so there really isn't a happy ending for this white mage at this point. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 enemy units confronting himself and 4 friends, which are never good odds. The next closest unit, Immortal Aquaman over here, is too far away to affect things and liable to also be punched to death pretty soon. And up here, he's got a bunch more units, but they're separated from him and up in the north. So definitely not a good situation. In terms of stats, kills and losses were equal, but the Loyalists lost more gold on account of losing a couple of expensive units, the Horseman and the Mage. Whereas all the units that the Northerners lost were... Wolf Riders are sort of expensive-ish, but they're not as expensive, and Troll Whelps and Naga Fighters are fairly cheap. Luck was pretty much dead even. There was almost no luck factor in that game whatsoever. So, that's that match, and Imir is going to advance to the next round, while Dakede has been eliminated. So now, let's go on to the last game of round 2, which is... hold on, I think I have to load it up. Okay, so the last match of round 2. Myself versus INTPTree. Down here we have INTPTree playing as the Northerners, and myself playing as the Rebels. One of my favorite factions. I like the Rebels, I also like the Northerners, but we'll see how this goes. So I start off with a pretty mixed recruit. I did throw in a daring little Woes, which against the Northerners, Woses aren't the best. But, I don't know that the Northerners yet, and I just thought, hey, I wanna get a Woes. So we've got a mixed bag of Elvish units down here. We've got lots of Trolls and a couple of Wolf Riders, plus an Orcish Assassin. Orcish Assassins are always good picks fairly early on. We've now identified each other, so I've seen the Northerners, and they have seen moi. My troll, my scout there, yes, he is kind of a troll, but he's mostly a scout, is pulling back to kind of defend my locations. So, as of this point, we've pretty much claimed our villages. I think all the villages on the map are claimed now. Yes? Yes, good. So, I've got my Elvish captain moving up towards the front, couple of Elvish fighters, and what I hope is a hidden secret Woes, plus an archer that I've just recruited. Over here on this flank, I have one Elvish shaman tenuously holding it down. Over on this side, I've got a scout and an archer, which should be enough to fend off attacks from a wolf rider and maybe a troll whelp or two. But beyond that, they're pretty much a holding force. My main strength is concentrated here in the center. Meanwhile, the Northerners are kind of dividing out to the flanks. They're developing an attack along this side with their troll whelps and their wolf rider. Got one assassin holding down the center, another troll whelp has just been recruited, and they've got a troll and a wolf rider over here on the right as well, perhaps to see if they can make a speculative push. So we're shifting units over to the flanks in order to guard against these attacks that I see coming in. That Wolf Rider, the Northerners in general are attacking in a very aggressive fashion. Now, part of this is because they don't see my Woes. But this, for example, I would say was just a over-bold move. This Wolf Rider is about to get absolutely sandwiched between Elvish Fighters, Elvish Shaman, potentially even my leader if I wanted to use my leader on this, and he's not going to survive. Plus, he has no backup anywhere nearby. The central attack has that assassin who got badly injured. It would have been a good attack if there was something to follow it up with, but there isn't a whole lot of follow-up behind her. And suddenly Woes. Doesn't get the hit, unfortunately. And we don't quite manage to get the Wolf Rider either. So we've got some assassins attacking the Woes. Fortunately, assassins are very inefficient against Woses, and I have leadership buffing my damage. Meanwhile, over on this side, I'm holding on good terrain and just making the enemy come to me, and now it is dawn, so the enemy damage output is going down. And there we go, the double Woes punch. Very solid stuff. Moving back to start, get towards recruitment. This attack I probably shouldn't have done. This was aggressive, I didn't need to do this. Over here, everything's going fine. And up here, everything's also going fine. That assassin really should retreat at this point. But he doesn't. He decides instead to attempt to punch. And for his pains, he will now be punched himself. I don't know why I didn't go for the ranged attack. Well, I didn't want to get poisoned again, I guess, but still, I probably shouldn't have gone for the ranged attack. I should have gone for the ranged attack to try and finish him off there. So, we've got pretty significant skirmishing on all sides. However, I have yet to lose a unit. I've killed a couple. I've killed a Troll Whelp, I've killed a Wolf Rider. Neither are super valuable units, but they have value, and it's worthwhile to take them out. We can see here that I've been luckier than my opponent so far in that I've taken... My damage is minus 15%, his damage is minus 8%, so I'm overall winning the rolls by a little, but not by a ton. If you're wondering why I did that, it's because I don't want this guy dying. I'd rather, if someone's going to die, I'd rather it be the Shaman, because the fighter is about halfway to leveling. Over here, we're developing a nice little attack. Middle of the day, middle of the open, the trolls have no cover. There's nowhere they can go and nothing they can do except die, and my Elvish Scout is more than halfway to Riderhood. It's always a nice feeling. It is the afternoon, unfortunately, so the orcs are about to get their buff. But we are in a pretty good place, especially experience-wise. We're successfully picking off enemy units at a pretty regular pace without losing any of mine. And now we have an Elvish Rider, so the first level 2 of the game. And this guy is just absolutely isolated. So what's happened here is, seeing that I've committed a lot of forces over on this side, my opponent has begun to swing forces towards this side, and he's working again to develop an attack in the center. Now, he should remember that I have a Woes here. But I also have a couple of units who can go to reinforce that Woes against a push. And once again, these units are not good against Woses. If you want to deal with a Woes, and in fact I would say in general you should have 1 or 2 Orcish archers just hanging around. Fire damage arrows do crushing damage to Woses, and Woses don't have good defenses anywhere, so it's not like they can dodge them. A couple guys with fire arrows would make the job of dealing with this guy a lot easier. Trolls are terrible at fighting Woses. Assassins are terrible at fighting Woses, both because they're hugely pierce resistant and because they regenerate, so they clear the poison every round. One assassin is decent to poison it just to stop him from regaining health, but after that you need something to kill him. Orcish grunts can do it at nighttime, or Orcish archers can do it, but troll whelps can't really. Alas, my shaman is dead, but that's okay, because my elvish fighter is very, very close to a level. And this movement made me suspect that they'd actually forgotten about the woes, because otherwise he should have tried to lock the woes down. Instead, he put his assassin right next to a village the woes could go to, and that's dangerous. Alright, getting close to a level on archer as well. I did this in an effort to level my fighter, which I successfully managed to do, so now I have an elvish hero as well. So at this point, there's been a few things about the game have put it heavily into my favor. despite the fact that the income is even, as the Northerners have made aggressive attacks with their slow units, I've been able to isolate those units and kind of cut them up one by one. So once again, if we look at stats here, I've only lost 1 Elvish Shaman. I've killed 8 Orcish units, most of them being Troll Whelps, or half of them. I've been slightly lucky, but not by much. This is a grand total of 10 damage more than I could have expected normally, and 6 less incoming damage than I would normally have expected. And I've already advanced 2 units by focusing my experience, and I've got a 3rd level on the way pretty soon for Sasayan here. So my advantage in terms of money and experience right now is fairly crushing. Isalphalon is having a lot of trouble, mainly because he's leaning very heavily on these hordes of troll whelps that just ate, as I've said, they don't do much damage, and they're shockingly fragile. Think about it this way. Think of it in terms of effective HP, okay? A troll whelp on empty land has 30% defense. And even on defensive terrain like a fort or a village, only has 40%. So on open land, it's 30% versus 40% defense. That difference by itself completely accounts for the HP difference. Orcish Grunts have 38 HP base, Troll Whelps have 42 HP base. That difference is more than erased by the difference in defense. On open ground, Orcs have 10% more defense, so they'll take 10% less damage. On villages or forts, it becomes much more pointed, because on a fort, for example, an Orcish Grunt has 60% defense, which means on average it's going to take more than twice as much damage as he has HP to kill him. A Troll Whelp has 40% defense. That's a big difference. It works out to a surprisingly large difference in effective hit points. Troll Whelps can't hold ground unless they're on mountains. They also can't really take ground very well, because they only have a 2-shot attack of moderate strength. They don't hit anything like as hard as an Orcish Grunt does. And they're more expensive than an Orcish Grunt. The one and only thing that Troll Whelps have going for them is if they're left alone for 2 or 3 rounds, they will regenerate all their damage back. Which is fine if you can make that happen. But for that to happen, what you have to have is a couple of Troll Grunts mixed in with a larger force, and the Troll Grunts get to have time away from the fighting to regenerate, which you can't have if you've recruited a ton of Troll Whelps to serve as your front line. At that point, they'll just get picked off because of their low defense one by one, which is what's happening right now. So the assassin went in and actually got killed by my Elvish captain, which was nice. Unexpected, but nice. And you can see here, this Elvish hero, he's got 3 units surrounding him, and he's doing shocking amounts of damage back to them because of that low defense. He's cutting them up with retaliation damage. Absolutely cutting them to pieces. He might actually be able to outfight all 3 of these units, just because their defenses are so low. But, you know what? I don't have to have him do that. I'm just gonna break him loose, get him somewhere where he can, actually, I guess I'm just keeping him there. I was trying to kill that Troll Whelp, didn't quite manage it. But over on this side, I'm actually attacking quite aggressively. And up here, the enemy attack has been more or less broken. Isalphalon keeps taking my village, but taking that village doesn't really stop me in any important way. And now my Orcish Archer is nearly leveled, so we're going to level him up by killing a troll, get an Elvish Ranger out. My Woes is getting his lawful damage bonus. And this Wolf Rider, while he is sitting on a village of mine, is not going to be doing any damage. Meanwhile, we are launching our attack down here. It's daytime, so Grug the Troll over here is doing less damage than one might expect, so he didn't quite manage to kill that Elvish fighter by himself. Did still get the kill, but this attack is drawing their attention completely away from my troops up north. Unfortunately, I do lose my Elvish Rider there. I was hoping that wouldn't happen, but it did. I also lose my Elvish Hero. Both of those units were very badly injured. So... Actually, no, I didn't leave my Elvish Hero. Where's my Elvish Hero? That's right, my Elvish Hero advanced down here. I lost another unit that was up here, and it was a level 1. It didn't really matter. at this point, my economic advantage is very significant. Not because I have more income, but just because I have more and better units. I still got 2 level 2 units on the field. He doesn't have any leveled units yet. He's got Vac the Troll Whelp and Gragor over here are both close to leveling, but neither have reached it yet. And I'm going to try to make sure that neither of them do so. And he's just got fewer units than I do. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total blue units on the board, whereas I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm sorry, he has 7 units on the board. My bad. I still outnumber him, and for the Northerners, being outnumbered is really bad, because their units are cheaper than everybody else's, so really, they should be doing the outnumbering. Really trying to take out Vac before he levels up, but the numbers aren't quite lining up for it. Oh, fuck. I was so salty right now. Vac has 2 hit points, he's 1 point away from leveling, and then Isalphalon made a critical error there. If that guy... So, Vac had 10 hit points after regenerating, right? What he should have done would be to attack one of the Elvish archers, because their blade attack, which does minus 20% damage to troll whelps, could not have killed him, even if it hit twice. Unfortunately, he was thinking in terms of killing a unit instead of saving his unit to level up, which it would have done since it was only 1 experience away from leveling. After the fight, it would have immediately leveled up. He would have been able to have a full health, healed, higher damage troll standing right here, which might not have changed the outcome of the game, but would at least have helped. Instead, he attacked Talefibras here, and his retaliation with that 5x4 sword attack was more than enough to kill the troll. So that was a goof. I think it was just a case of not paying super close attention. Which, God knows I'm guilty of plenty of times. So we're going to finish off this troll there. Real close to another level. 1 experience away from another level 2 unit. And at this point, there just really isn't a way for the Northerners to stop me. I've got too many units coming in at him from too many different directions. And he does not have the resources to prevent me from taking over. Though he does have the resources to send a Wolf Rider up here to be annoying as hell. So yes, we are launching a nighttime attack, but honestly, the resource disparity is so wide at this point that I really feel that's okay. I'm perfectly happy to just launch my attack, get it over with. I've got an Elvish Captain there, plus my original starting Elvish Captain. Trying to kill this Orcish Grunt, but he refuses to be shot. But now, Grug the Troll has come out to face me, and we are going to try to close the noose on him. Though he has successfully surrounded himself with a number of units that will make that tricky. But at this point, I have a lot of level 2s as well, because I've got, right now, I've got an Elvish Marksman, I've got an Elvish Ranger, I've got an Elvish Hero who's down here methodically taking all of Isalphalon's villages, and I have the, Marksman, Ranger, Hero, and Captain. So I've leveled up. I've actually leveled up 5 units, but I lost 1 of them. But that's a lot of levels. Luck has basically evened out. I am still sad that I lost my Elvish Rider, but if I had to lose a level 2, the Elvish Rider is by far the least damaging level 2 to lose. At this point, I decided to pull back. I'm like, I don't want to fight this blob of troops at nighttime. I'm just going to hold off for a minute, move in, start taking over his little village here. This assassin was being incredibly annoying as well. They're really trying, and they did manage to assassinate my about-to-level Elvish Archer. More's the pity. But I know that if I can get past this troll, yes, I'll be able to move units in to assassinate Grug. And it ends as it should end, with my leader murdering the enemy leader in single combat. Well, just you and me and my guards. Robin Hood kind of single combat. So, game 1 to me, Isalphalon lost a pretty hard-fought game, but one that was definitely, in his case, I think it was mainly the recruitment choices that did it. Troll whelps in numbers like that, without a whole lot of support units, they just don't work well. Even with support units, sometimes they don't work well, but having 1 or 2 is usually a good idea. So let's move on to game 2. In game 2, I once again randomed the rebels. So I was happy. And Isalphalon got the Knolgans, which we haven't really seen much in this tournament. I think we've seen Knolgans once or twice, but not very often. We're just going to try to speed through this a little bit. This game was... It was an interesting one. We've got 2 primarily neutral factions, but secondarily, like, our secondary units, like for me, mages and horsemen, and for him, the outlaw units, in my case are lawful, in his case are chaotic. So, despite being primarily neutral factions, the rebels and the Knolgans do definitely have different time of day preferences. Early on, my usual kind of wide recruitment, the only thing I've doubled up on is archers and fighters. In his case, Isalphalon started off by recruiting very aggressively dwarvish. So we got 2 dwarvish fighters, 2 dwarvish thunderers or dwarven thunderers, and then 2 rogues. Or I guess they're just thieves at this point, which is probably a pretty good idea. They're fast, they have backstab, they're like kind of one of the Knolgan scout units. Footpads are a more classic scouty type unit because they're cheaper, but thieves definitely work. Up here we have now made contact, and I've moved my leader to mirror his leader across this little river. So on this map, he's got a decent amount of defensive terrain. Excuse me, caught in the yawn. He's got a decent amount of defensive terrain to station his dwarves on, but the slowness of his dwarves is definitely going to be a problem because he's getting drawn into a fight down here that these units can't really support. Yeah, that was quite a lucky little round of archer attacks against that thief, but it's what I needed to do. Meanwhile, up here, unfortunately, my elvish archer gets kind of caught out of position because I put her there. It was totally my fault, and murdered, so that's an expensive early loss. But I still feel like I pretty much have this under control. Got some units taking that ruined fort, other units watching the river. I've got a woes in the trees here. Dwarves are not great at dealing with woses. Fortunately, their powerful ranged attacks are all piercing. They don't have any fire damage or magic. So woses can weather most of what they can do pretty well. Ironically, the most dangerous unit on the Knolgan roster to a wose is probably the dwarvish fighter with that battle axe attack, since woses don't resist slashing very much. But we've managed to snipe out a thunderer, and we killed that thief up here. So, turn 8, if we look at the stats, you can see that I've gotten a little bit lucky, but not very lucky. In terms of my losses, we've actually both killed and lost pretty heavily at this point. I've killed off No, I forgot to reset the stats. Hold on one second. Okay, so, sorry about that. Stats should be accurate now. Yes, okay, that's a lot more reasonable. Yeah, I've killed 2 units to 1 loss, so I'm a little bit up at this point. I'm also a little bit lucky at this point, which is sometimes correlated. That attack that I made up here, very unwise, and I shouldn't have done it. But I have pretty much managed to recover from that up here. I repulsed his counterattack. And down here, I've got 3 units, albeit 2 of them are fairly weak, fighting against 2 of his. So I'm in pretty decent shape down on the south side. And right now, I just kind of have to maintain what I have, because I have a very significant income advantage. I've got 12 villages to his 4. If I can maintain anything like that kind of disparity, even for a few turns, I'll just overwhelm him with numbers. This is definitely a case of a game being won/lost, primarily on account of mobility. I established a very significant mobility advantage over his slow dwarves, and I've been able to turn that into a very significant resource advantage. Also, this mage keeps killing all his thieves, which can't help. But, as you can see here, he's trying to move his units south in order to fight off my push over here and perhaps secure some of these villages. But in exchange, in retaliation, essentially, I'm just going to move my sorceress down here to keep him blocked off while my units move in to take over his operations up on this side of the map. Now, this Thunderer on a mountain, I'm just not even going to bother with it. This Thunderer has 70% defense, but as long as I stay away from the mountain, he has to come down in order to affect anything. So we're not going to attack, we're not going to give him that lopsided damage ratio that he really wants to get. We're just going to not engage. Those units can stay where they are while I try to deal with stuff down here in the south. This Elvish Scout is honestly giving me value, which Elvish Scouts often don't do. And I'm afraid his heroism will be rewarded with death. Pretty sure. Oh no, I guess I did get him out. Nope, heroism definitely being rewarded with death. There it is, there's the death. But come the night time, my attacks are going in. This incredibly dodgy thief is getting on my nerves, but it just doesn't matter. Right now, the money disparity has conspired to enable me to have a much superior army. I've managed to draw this guy off his mountain, albeit he is still on the hills, which is still high defense for dwarves, so not a great change, but I have managed to now kill the thief, get a woes into the village, who won't be shot off it by a thunderer, and I'm now doing direct damage to INTPTree's leader, and in fact, I'm trying to assassinate him this turn. But 'twas not to be. Still, at this point, I'm pretty much in a winning position. Yes, the dwarves have units around, but not as many as me, and not as strong as mine, and their leader is down to half health and kind of trapped in the middle of his enemies. So they've got to kill 2 units in order to get him free. They have to finish off Marion here. And then they also have to kill my Elvish Shaman. If they can do that, he can retreat up here to the keep, try to summon another unit, or he can just try to run if he wants to. The other alternative would be to kill both of these units, but that's really not practical given the way the units are configured. They pretty much have to go for this Elvish Shaman, whose name I can't pronounce. So instead of running away to safety, they've simply moved their Steelclad slightly north, which is still a decent idea, because that's going to prevent me from attacking it with more than 2 units. Except, unless I take advantage of one of Wesnoth's peculiarities, which is what I just did there. Because Wesnoth relies, of course, on units moving in sequence, it is entirely possible to take a badly injured unit, deliberately attack someone whose retaliation is likely to kill that unit, to get a little bit of quote-unquote free damage when getting damage is important, so that you can then put another unit in the slot and effectively attack with 3 or maybe 4 units from 2 spaces. The AI does this to you a lot in the campaign. In multiplayer, it's uncommon, because normally wounded units are going to be retreated in an effort to save them. But right now, if I can take out INTPTree, that's the game. I don't need to save any more units. So I was willing to sacrifice that Elvish Fighter just in the aim of getting an extra 5 or 10 points of damage off on him. And it worked out. And now my leader is coming up with a magic attack to finish INTPTree off. So that is the game. Realistically speaking, that was an economic victory. I had more money, more stuff. I took pretty heavy losses doing it, to be honest. Like, losses and kills were even in terms of numbers, slightly higher in terms of gold, but right up until I killed his leader, which was the end of the game, he was actually ahead in kills by a little bit. So this was definitely a victory won by mobility, and this is the great weakness of the Knolgans. Dwarves are slow. Dwarves can't protect villages. Dwarves can't prosecute an aggressive offensive. Dwarves can barely move defensively. What dwarves have to do is find terrain that is suitable for them and stand on it and form a wall. So hills and mountains, hills and mountains, hills and mountains, hills and mountains. 60% defense in hills, 70% defense in mountains. This right here is a natural dwarf redoubt. You have a unit there, and a unit on one or both of these two spaces. Those three are going to be very, very hard to shift, especially if you have a couple backup units hovering around this area. This, likewise, is a dwarf redoubt. If you have to blockade the river for some reason, having a unit there and a unit there will do it very effectively, or one there and one there. Hills and mountains are the dwarven natural home. They are just as terrain dependent as elves are, if not more so, because they also have low defense on the flat and in woods. Fortunately, they do have decent defense in villages, but it's not 60%, it's only 50%. So, dwarves are like trolls. Dwarves seem very tanky because of relatively high HP pools, but once you calculate it out according to what their defense percentages are in different places, they're actually not all that tanky, unless they're on their preferred terrain. A dwarf, say guardsman, on a mountain is the next best thing to immortal, but he's never going anywhere or doing anything else except holding that mountain, and maybe the next mountain over, once you've advanced a little bit. So, in any case, that is the end of round 2 in its entirety. That's both of the following matches. We've completed round 2, we're moving on to round 3. Definitely narrowing the field, and it'll be very, very interesting to go over those later battles with you. So, thank you all so much for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, I know a lot of you don't. I mean, I know view counts on this, the tournament are fairly low at this point, but you know what? I enjoy it, and I'm glad that some of you do. So if you do like this stuff, consider supporting my Patreon if you like that. If you want to toss a little bit into the kitty, as it were, more tournaments and stuff like this will be coming. And of course, this tournament will be wrapping up over the next week or two. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.